Yo, what's up guys? You got pokeaim here with another Pokemon Sword and Shield moveset video guide on how to use Perrserker. Now, this Pokemon's really interesting. I was actually waiting to use this because I was waiting for the RU tier to be released on Smogon, but it's pretty cool because it turned Meowth and Persian into a Steel type. I guess this is not Persian, right? That's kind of disrespectful, right? There's Galarian Persian, there's regular Persian, then there's Perrserker. It's his cousin. But we have a really nice base 110 attack stat and a pretty solid base 100 defense stat. Besides that, though, very slow at base 50, and its special defense leaves a lot to be desired. But this Pokemon does have some pretty cool abilities. Tough Claws, for one, is incredible, making all of its contact moves have their power multiplied by 1.3. And then it does have a new ability in Steely Spirit, which we'll be talking about on, I believe, the last set. That basically makes this Pokemon its allies. So whether you're in a single battle or in a double battle, their Steel type moves have their base power multiplied by 1.5. So just to give you an idea of how powerful that makes a move like Iron Head, for instance, right? Because that is Stab. It's a pure Steel type. Iron Head is 80 base power naturally. It becomes 120 base power after Stab. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it becomes 180 base power with Steely Spirit factored in. I could be wrong about that, but I believe that's where it actually what it actually becomes. So it's an incredibly cool ability, and it also works for partners as well. But for the most part, I think that Tough Claws does outclass it, as while that particular ability, Steely Spirit, does boost the Steel type attacks, Tough Claws boost all of its other physical attacks. And having base 110 attack, you want to use them physical attacks. So the first set we're going to be talking about is a Choice Band set, taking advantage of that base 110 attack, taking advantage of that Tough Claws, and really just taking advantage of its good move pool. Iron Head is your stab move, obviously giving you just a good strong move in general, having that 30% chance to flinch. Whereas the Pokemon that resist Iron Head, Steel types, Water types, right, Fire types, they all take neutral for the most part from close combat, and close combat is great, especially on a Choice Band set, because let me just give you an idea of how powerful this thing is. This thing is now in the RU tier, correct? Where Pokemon like Steelix are down there, right? Steelix is you know, it's probably going to be the premier Steel type for the RU tier. It is incredibly defensive, and max defense, max HP, Impish Steelix takes 60 to 70% from a close combat from Perrserker. So that's just giving you an idea of how strong Adamant, Choice Band, Tough Claws, close combat really is. That's a Steelix taking 60 to 70%. You do about 80% to max HP of Scavalier. Obviously, that's a neutral move too on that part. And they just pair really well together. Of course, though, ghost types like Jellicent, which are in the tier, that's a big one actually. Jellicent's probably one of the main answers that's going to come in on this Pokemon. Unless you just naturally outspeed it and threaten it with like a fire type move or a burn from Will-O-Wisp. But Crunch allows you to deal with that, hitting it extremely hard. And with max HP, with max attack, max speed, and Adamant Nature, you hit 199 speed with max investment. And this allows you to outspeed defensive Jellicent, unless Jellicent starts like really speed creeping. But just to give you an idea of how much Crunch does, it does over 75% minimum to defensive Jellicent. So it's a cool Pokemon, and honestly, on top of that, it has U-turn, which is great for momentum, right? Maybe you don't know. There's always prediction game, right, when you're using a choice lock Pokemon, because you're locked into a move. It's like, oh, okay, are they going to stay in? Are they going to go for another move? Well, you have U-turn. U-turn gains you momentum while also coming off of a strong attack stat, Tough Claws boosted and Choice Band boosted. I think this is going to be one of its premier sets, personally, but there's another set that I think is actually a little bit better. But I think it'll be one of its premier sets as a wall breaker, just because it's incredibly hard to switch into, though it does face competition from a Scavalier, which also got close combat this generation, and access to knockoff. But Perrserker, pretty cool mon in terms of teammates for the Choice Band set, or in general. I think Sticky Web is pretty awesome. RU has some good Sticky Webbers. They have Pokemon like the, what is it? What is it called? Wow, I cannot remember its name. Oh, you got it as a gift. Why can I not? Shuckle. Bro, why could I not remember Shuckle's name for a second? But Shuckle is a really good teammate. Shuckle provides Stealth Rock support. A lot of the KOs I mentioned were relatively close, but it provides Stealth Rock support. It provides Sticky Web support, which I think is very big. And I think water types like Jellicent is actually a pretty good a pretty good teammate as well, resisting the fire type attacks coming out at Perrserker. And also, it can take most of the ground type attacks. For example, Steelix, while you do a massive damage if Steelix switches into you, Steelix can knock you out after the defense drop with Earthquake. So they work really well together because Jellicent will just take on Steelix and can burn it, and Will-O-Wisp and Scald and whatnot. But yeah, it's an incredibly strong Pokemon, and going on to the next set, we actually have Swords Dance, because this Pokemon does have access to Swords Dance, and it's pretty similar to the last set, but we're going to be using a Life Orb just for the additional power. I think you could also use a Lumberry, just because, again, this Pokemon is very, very strong, so you don't necessarily need to use a Life Orb to pick up your KOs. But we'll be using Jolly Nature. Main reason we're using Jolly is because, again, with a Pokemon that's this slow, you want to have multiple opportunities to get off attack. So I think that Jolly just works better than Adamant. First off, you're faster than Adamant Perrserker, and you're faster than very, very, very much sped crap Jellicent. Like, Jellicent has to run near max speed on a neutral nature in order to outspeed you, which will obviously hinder its ability to be very defensive, and it even only outspeeds you by like a point. Like, I had to run literally max speed on a neutral nature in order to outspeed you. But Swords Dance with a Life Orb Crunch allows you to knock out Jellicent in one hit. With that crunch, Life Orb boosted crunch. Close Combat will knock out Steelix as well after going for a Swords Dance. And then Iron Head, of course, is your main stab. And this one can also work very well under Sticky Web. You definitely want ground immunities, though. Rotom Fan is something that comes to mind. Resistances as well. A Selgor is a pretty cool one because it does resist the Earthquake and can get up spikes and can Toxic Spike as well. I think that Vaporeon is a nice little Wish Passer as well, which we'll be talking about for the next set that you guys will see in a second. And the thing about this Pokemon is that while it is a Steel type, a lot of the Fairy types in the tier can deal with it, right? You have Indeedee, which threatens it with Mystical Fire. You have Alcremie, which threatens it with Mystical Fire as well. Opposing Steel types that you could hit with super effective Close Combat can also threaten you back with super effective Earthquake, or not even, like, it doesn't have to be super effective, just neutral. Like, a Scavalier obviously takes neutral from your hits, but it can threaten you back with a super effective Close Combat from there. So its speed is definitely, like, I think its biggest weakness in that regard. And even, like, something like Galarian Rapidash, whereas it won't knock you out in one hit if it's at neutral, but if it Swords Dance up, it can knock you out with +2 high horsepower. The next set, though, I think takes advantage of how RU seems to look, right? I already mentioned you have Pokemon like Indeedee down there. I mentioned a Selgor. Selgor's a strong special attacker. Roserade is down there as well, and it hits incredibly hard the entire tier with, like, Sludge Bomb and Leaf Storm. Can spike up, can synthesis and whatnot. So the Assault Vest set of Perrserker is really interesting because its ability to take on all those aforementioned Pokemon, doesn't die to Mystical Fire, is not 2 KO by Specs Mystical Fire from Indeedee. It has enough attack investment with 56 attack to knock out Rotom after Stealth Rock guaranteed with Crunch. And Fake Out, I think, is a pretty cool, notable thing, too, because you're using this to get chip damage, right? That's why you have Fake Out and U-Turn. You're basically, the idea behind Assault Vest Perrserker is to come in on potentially a Fairy type, or come in on a Pokemon like a Selgo, right? Like, you take Bug Buzz into a Throat Spray boosted Focus Blast. You also take Life Orb Bug Buzz into Life Orb Focus Blast. So, Perrserker can be pretty bulky in that regard. The Assault Vest obviously means that it can only use attacks, which we only have on this set, and then gets the 1.5 times special defense boost. It's actually better to run 200 HP, 252 Spadef in this set as opposed to max HP 200 Spadef, just because it takes it better. It takes hits just like 2% better, I believe, for the most part on the calculations that I ran. But being able to take some special hits as well, and this one definitely likes support from Vaporeon. Vaporeon also being able to take on, you know, like the combination of Perrserker plus Vaporeon. Perrserker can take on Roserade for Vaporeon. It can take on Rotom for Vaporeon as well. But Fake Out, Iron Head is your stab move, U-Turn, and then Crunch or Close Combat. I think Crunch is better because it gives you like the most neutral coverage overall, whereas Close Combat will give you that super effective hit on something like a Steel type like Steelix, for instance. But I mean, you can just U-Turn out into Vaporeon anyway, but using it as a more of a support Pokemon and abusing that Tough Claws Fake Out just to get chip. Obviously what Fake Out does is when it touches you, it flinches the opponent, right? So it gives you more of that chip damage, and pair it with like spikes, toxic spikes, all that damage starts to rack out with Perrserker. But it's very slow, so keep that in mind. I would compare this thing to Hariyama in terms of like an Assault Vest user. Hariyama, though, is just bulkier and has guts as well. But Tough Claws is really nice as well, just coming off. I think another option could be, if you don't want to run Crunch or Close Combat, potentially Metal Burst. Metal Burst would still work. However, I just think Crunch and Close Combat give you more coverage all around. Whereas the way Metal Burst works is if you take a hit, you do 1.5 times back to them. But it's not really meant to knock out Pokemon. It's more, though it can beat, like it'll beat Roserade with Fake Out and Iron Head. It'll beat the special attackers if it needs to, especially with hazard support. But that's not necessarily its role. Its role is to just tank the hits and pivot around. The last set we have is taking advantage of its ability, Steely Spirit, which of course boosts the Iron Head and Steel type attacks. So it does have access to Curse as well, which will be boosting its attack and its defense. And with its great 110 attack and really nice base 100 defense, this can really work. So like a Curse, Rest, Sleep Talk, and Iron Head set could work. Because we're only using Iron Head, you might as well use Steely Spirit. It does have Battle Armor as well, which prevents crits, but I mean, I would use the move that makes your Iron Head even stronger, especially if you're going in with mono Iron Head, right? So the idea is you can use this to absorb status like Will-O-Wisp or Paralysis, Curse Up, Rest for longevity. Sleep Talk allows you to pick either Curse, Rest, or Iron Head. And when I mean pick, I mean the game picks for you, 1 in 3 chance. And then Leftovers also gives you that longevity. This set's probably way better with Toxic Spike support, so Roserade is a great thing. As well. There's other Toxic Spikers down there too. But Toxic Spike support I think is almost key because a Pokemon like Jellicent could wall you. Though if Jellicent is not running Taunt and you have Toxic Spike up, you can definitely Curse and beat it 1v1. And you'll be able to beat other ghost types like Dusknoir in the tier. You can beat Gourgeist in the tier as well. So just being able to Curse and Rest up. And of course with max special defense, you still take on Pokemon like Roserade and Accelgor, just not as well as you would with Assault Vest. So be careful because Accelgor's Focus Blast does hurt a lot. But yeah, using it as a mono attacker in one. I wanted to use Steely Spirit. I've used Choice Band with Steely Spirit too, but from testing, Tough Claws was just way better, right? Just like Steely Spirit making Iron Head super strong is great, but when you're switching into Steelix and Jellicent, does that really matter? Like, I'd rather have a boosted Close Combat or a boosted Crunch. But at that's basically what I have for Perrserker. It does have a bunch of other cool moves too that I didn't really mention. Baton Pass is cool. In the metagame I'm playing with this, I don't think it's necessary. I also think there's a lot better Baton Passers too. But like Ninjas, for instance, can pass Swords Dance and Speed Boosts, whereas this can just pass Swords Dance. It does have access to Nasty Plot though, which is pretty cool as well. But it also has Play Rough, maybe something that could be worked on a Choice Band set or something. Seed Bomb as well can be used to deal with a Pokemon like Quagsire, though just keep in mind Quagsire, like it's gonna take, it still takes a lot, right? It still takes a lot from a Choice Band Close Combat, especially from an Adamant Nature Perrserker. So just to give you guys an idea, it does 50 to 59%. So it's an 83% chance to KO, to do a KO with Leftovers recovery. Just something to keep in mind. So of course, if you have like Spikes or Stealth Rock or anything like that, that will obviously make the difference. So, but if that's something, an issue, if you're using it in OU, maybe that can work for also Toad or Gastrodon if you're using it, maybe another tier as well. Again, and one other thing, I suppose if you want to be crazy and use this thing in the tier where Toxapex is, you can use Swords Dance, Power Herb, Dig, and that will allow you to knock out Spadef Toxapex. But besides that, I don't think it's necessary. Anyway, hope you guys all enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something. Feel free to leave a like and subscribe. You do help out my channel by leaving a like, subscribing, leaving comments, all that stuff. Got to figure out how Kappa is going to be, going forward. And you can check out the Pokemon Showdown Live coming out later today, where I actually use this Pokemon in a few battles. So that's all I have. Have a great new year. We're in January 2nd, so I should have said that more in the first one. But yeah, I'll see you guys later with another video. Goodbye, friends.